Do you want a real garden hack, like a real cheat code to make the best of your home landscaping? No gimmicks. One thing I've learned about gardening is that in the beginning, it's much more about what you add rather than what you take away. A lot of you really liked my last video where I gave simple ideas to improve your landscaping if you have a boring front yard. So today we're gonna look at more standard landscaping on real houses for an example of where anyone can improve and create space for something beautiful. I work with mostly American plants, but these ideas can be applied to any garden. So you can get the 4 B's: bees, butterflies, birds, and bunnies. Okay, the glasses have to come on. All right, what do we have here? This is a beautiful home. In my area, a lot of the houses look like this. You have the garage that's kind of in the front of the house, and the house is behind the garage. And that gives us a really great space right here to create a garden. Of course, you're gonna see the evergreens in the front. These have probably been there for a while. They don't really look like they're in bad shape or anything like that, but let's just kind of see what we have. We have this beautiful bay window right here. I should get a bigger cursor. How do I do that? Great. Wow, that's a big pointer. Okay. There is another angle of this house, so let's take a look at that. Okay, like I said, really cute. They already have a little garden right here between the sidewalk and the garage right here. This is probably about pretty small, maybe 3 feet, and it already has some plants in there. This is obviously a winter picture, so I can't see what kind of plants they have, but this looks pretty nice. So what we have to address basically is this negative space in here where there's so much opportunity to have a garden. Of course, you see this beautiful bay window right here. It's actually kind of a newer window. It's not shaped like these windows. It's very open, kind of large. They want to look outside and they want to see something beautiful in their yard. So let's give them something to look at. I am really torn about these evergreens here. Now, if I were working with someone and they were a client, I would not suggest that they remove these unless they really didn't like them, because they kind of look okay. They're really not offensive, but they're just not really adding a whole lot to the landscape. I mean, it's the only thing that you can see in the winter, but let's say we did want to get rid of them and maybe replace them with something a little bit more exciting. Let's see if it'll let us remove it. Okay, that's not so bad. Let's start with that. There we go. So we kind of have a blank slate in the front yard here. There's a shrub right here, which is actually in pretty good shape. It's a decent size for the house. It's not overgrown. It looks very healthy and symmetrical. You do want to take a look behind it to make sure that it's not touching the house. You don't want your shrubs touching your siding because that's going to trap water, and we all know water is the enemy as far as houses are concerned. For plants, we love water. So I'm going to go to another page and just grab a plant palette that I made earlier. Okay, so I brought some of my favorite plants and shrubs over. The first thing I'm gonna do is kind of take a look at where we're gonna make our garden line. Where's the edging of the garden gonna be? Now, if this was me, you know, I like big gardens. I would start at the edge of the sidewalk right here and just kind of draw a line out this way and around. And I would put the garden right there. This is gonna be a lot of garden for a beginner to do. So I really wouldn't suggest this much garden unless you're working with somebody who has some experience, or you have some experience yourself, or maybe you just have some time to learn about all the plants and what kind of care a new garden is going to have. Now, anytime I have a large garden like this, I do want to stress that it's difficult to work on the middle of the garden. You kind of can't get to it. So it's easy to do the maintenance around here, do your weeding, do any watering here, but then when it comes to the middle, sometimes it can be hard to access, especially when the plants kind of are growing up and they're larger. So whenever I have a large garden like this, I always want to make some kind of path through the garden so that I can maintain it. The other thing is that we have a front door right here. Sometimes you're going to want to go out this front door and you're going to want to go to the backyard, and maybe you don't want to have to walk all the way around. So sometimes I will put a pathway just with some basic stones, flagstone, or even some cheaper, pavers, not the small ones that are like 4 by 6, but the larger ones that are maybe 12 by 12, maybe 18 by 18, and they're rectangular or square, and you can just kind of put them here through the garden. And you can do a proper install of these, which takes a little bit more work, but then they won't sink into the ground. Or you can just put them down and just check them every year to put mulch underneath them to make sure that they don't just sink into the ground and disappear forever. So I would put a path right here if I were making this really large garden. The path is important both for being able to access the backyard without it being kind of a hassle to go around this side. And the other reason is it's going to be easier for you to get in here and weed, because every garden needs weeding. There's no way around it. You do want to be able to get in there, take out plants without having to just kind of step on everything and compact the soil. You're gonna have a designated path where you're gonna do most of your walking. So because there is a little bit of space here, I think that a small tree would be perfect for this area. So I brought this serviceberry over. Serviceberry is Amelanchier. Amelanchier. They have edible berries that actually taste really good. You can make them into a pie, you can eat them fresh. They really don't store very well, and that's why you can't find service berries in the supermarket. By the time they get to the shelf, they're already kind of ratty looking. So service berries aren't really a retail crop, but you can grow them at home and you can eat them in the spring. Of course, you want to leave some for the cedar waxwings. Okay, so now we have a serviceberry in here. This is beautiful. Great start, right? We've got a little path and we've got a serviceberry. And of course, then we would mulch this whole area after removing the grass in the way that you deem appropriate. We did remove the evergreens from in front of the bay window, but I would like to put some more small shrubs. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab a winterberry. This is an ilex species. Winterberries are beautiful. This is what they look like in the winter. I really wanted to feature this since this house has snow in the picture. That's like literally how they look. I know this is a picture and it's probably like you think, oh, well, it's not really gonna look like that. They kind of look like that. They're just a beautiful shrub. You can get dwarf versions of the winterberry. A normal winterberry will get probably 10 feet tall. You can cut them down to about 5 feet, but if you get some of the more compact varieties, they will stay this size. Some of them have a lot of berries on them too. The winterberry is a really great source of nutrients for winter birds because the berries actually have quite a bit of a fat content. So that really helps the birds when it's really cold in the winter and there obviously isn't a lot of food around. I do think there's enough sun in this location. I'm gonna go ahead and put a tall grass right there. I love my Northwind Panicum virgatum. Of course, these winterberries are going to be green in the spring. So I wanna have something else in the spring that's really going to attract attention. So how about some Baptisia australis? These are really pretty. We could even put a nice group of 3. Baptisia do get large, but from the street, they're not gonna look too large at all. It's just gonna look like this beautiful cluster of purple flowers in the spring. It's nice because it's blooming early, and that's really what we need for spring because man, the morale is low in the winter. Oh, and the other thing about the serviceberry, Harry, is that serviceberries are very tasty to rabbits and deer. So guess what? We're gonna have to put our little cage over our serviceberry. If you don't cage your serviceberry, you will regret it. And then I'll put my hardware cloth also around the bark right there. The hardware cloth is going to protect the trunk from rabbits and mice, and then the cage is going to protect it from deer. Most small bunnies can get in there and nibble on the tree, so that's why we need the second layer of protection from the hardware cloth. Serviceberries just get eaten. That is just kind of a thing that happens to them. So now we can just go nuts. I mean, let's put some flowers in there. I like to put Black-Eyed Susans kind of second tier from the front because they're about 3 feet tall, so something smaller can definitely fit in front of them, but I like them in the front because they're showy and we really want to show off the garden to the neighborhood. I always put penstemon in a full sun garden. They love sun, they can tolerate some drought. Now every time I make a full sun garden, I always want to include some milkweed. So here's some orange milkweed. This is because monarch butterflies can only eat milkweed plants. The adults will nectar on any kind of flower, but the babies, the monarch caterpillars, can only eat milkweed. So that's orange milkweed, but I'm also gonna go ahead and put some swamp milkweed in here, Asclepias incarnata. That's a lot of butterflies. There we go, there's some Asclepias incarnata, beautiful. And of course, I'm gonna fill in down here with my grasses. Depending on how big they are, these usually are pretty good, about 18 inches apart. Some people do 12 inches. I've seen Sporobolus planted at 12 inches. They are a little bit crowded, but it's fine. You could do 12 inches, you could do 18 inches. I didn't even bring any phlox in here. You could totally put some phlox, but this is generally how you would kind of design. I like some shrubs in the front. That looks good to me. You don't have to put shrubs. You could put grasses in the front instead. This is a basic butterfly garden. It actually doesn't have anything for the autumn. them, I need to get, all right, here's an aromatic aster. Asters bloom late in the season, and aromatic aster will bloom like in late September. And they do get kind of big, so make sure to cut them in half every year. These will grow big on the ends here and just make these huge mounds of purple flowers. I really like aromatic aster. If I were designing this garden professionally, I would probably get a lot more granular with this. I would use more species. This is just something that I'm throwing together to show you. Designing a garden doesn't have to be too hard. You don't have to use a ton of species at first, and you don't have to remove everything. If we were to use this right here, we could still design the garden around these shrubs right here. We don't have to remove them. They're just kind of there. You know, we could still draw this garden around here. You could still put the serviceberry in the middle and put flowers and grasses all around it. I guarantee if you look at your grass, if you have a house like this, you're going to see, wow, there's so much potential for a garden here. All right, let's look at another one. I'm running out of battery over here, so I gotta step it up. Okay, I just wanted to show this house because it is almost the same as the other house. It's just that the garage is on the other side. It's basically a mirror of what we just did. So here's kind of the same exact line I would do for the garden as I did with the last one. And surprise, surprise, what do we see here? Some evergreens that aren't really doing anything for the front of the house. This is fine right here, and this tree looks pretty healthy. But if you look at these guys, you know, as a homeowner, you can ask yourself, are they making the house look nicer? In my opinion, well, it's kind of a wash. They're just there. They're just little rectangular shoebox green pieces here. If it were me, I would probably take them out because they just don't look great. The other one right here, they did look kind of nice, like they were kind of rounded in a certain way. But these right here, they're looking pretty shabby. I would get rid of them, and I would put winterberries in the front, or chokeberries, clethra, or maybe some grasses and some flowers. There's a lot more that you can do with this space. Once you get rid of those things, you're going to find that there's so much to work with. Okay, I just wanted to show you how these houses are kind of similar. You can use these design principles, and don't let the garage being on the other side trip you up. Okay, so this is a pretty cool modern looking house. I don't know if it's a new house or they just did like a big renovation. It's pretty cool looking. It's very angular. It's got a lot of right angles here. They really have a blank slate. I mean, there's no landscaping here. I don't see anything. I see grass, and I see their neighbors kind of have some privacy hedge landscaping over there. Pretty much nothing. Here's another view of the same house, basically blank slate. The first thing I'm thinking about is that we have this tree right here that has a really, really tiny mulch ring around it. This is like a 2-inch mulch ring. Trees really like a bigger mulch ring. So I would take the mulch and I would extend it out this way, and I would make it larger, and then I would plant shade plants underneath the tree. I would plant sedges, violets, Jacob's ladder, wild ginger. Trees really like a little bit of breathing room. Grass doesn't have very deep roots, but it's very thick, and it doesn't always allow the water to like sink into the ground very well. And so trees this size actually end up competing with the grass. And the grass over here, it's actually sometimes hard to keep this grass alive underneath the tree. And we think, oh, it's because the tree is casting a lot of shade on the grass. Yeah, that's true sometimes, but a lot of times it's also because it's competing for water. Just don't even bother. Don't even bother trying to grow grass around trees like this. Just give it a little bit more space. Obviously, if it was me, I would grab this line and I would make it way bigger. And then I would have a beautiful shade garden underneath this tree. A lot of our shade plants are kind of low to the ground, so it looks beautiful. It's like a little fairy garden with sedges and those little purple flowers that we see, like Virginia bluebells. Really pretty. And then this area, there's a lot of different things that you could do with it. You could do like what I normally do, which is just kind of to grow this garden out and make a big garden here. But you know, if you wanted to kind of keep in line with the house, the way the house is designed, I mean, you could put like a semicircle here. We can get out a protractor or whatever and make that like a really perfect line, because this house just has so many crisp lines. I can't make one here because I'm too lazy to get out the tool. But you know, you can make like a really good edging right here that would match the house. The house is all squares and stuff, but you know, you don't have to match it perfectly. It doesn't have to be matchy. You can complement it, but have a nice crisp edge here, because I feel like that crispness is kind of, you know, what they're looking for in this house. Now, the other thing that I'm seeing is we got this air conditioner right here, and I want to make an air conditioner garden. Air conditioner garden is not a garden that is like right around the air conditioner because, you know, look at your manufacturer's instructions. It probably says that you want vegetation to be a certain number of feet from the air conditioner, but you still kind of want to hide it because this is a pretty house. And then, you know, we always want to hide this kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look. Oh, I left them here at my last property. Let's go ahead and get this. So these are, last time I said that these were going to represent chokeberries. You can put chokeberries here. You could also use red osier dogwood. A hazelnut would also work. You want something that is going to tolerate a little bit of shade. So red osier dogwood, chokeberries, they do tolerate a little bit of shade, and you do want something that's going to grow a little bit taller. So there we go. We've obscured the air conditioner right here. There we go. Looks better already. So let's start with this shade garden. Here's our wild ginger. And I always forget about ferns. Ferns are so great for shady areas. They're so pretty. These are Jacob's Ladder, Polemonium reptans, and I would also put some violets in here, and then a bunch of sedges. When you put sedges together, they look so pretty. Don't worry about it not having enough flowers. The sedges make the flowers pop. They make the flowers look so good. I don't have anything representing violets right now, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put more Jacob's Ladder to just kind of show you how pretty a shade garden can be. I really like to mix up my stuff in the shade garden. You can put little clumps, but I just kind of put the sedges in there and then I just scatter the flowers amongst the sedges. It's so cute, like a little fairy garden, and I love wild ginger. It looks so pretty. That's really what makes it look like a fairy garden. Something like this isn't out of your reach. You don't have to be a garden designer. You don't really have to have an artistic eye, actually. You just have to kind of know what species work well in the shade. This is going to be a dry shade area because you can see that we're uphill. It's not like there's a lot of water that's going to collect here. And underneath trees, it tends to be pretty dry because the tree roots are soaking up a lot of the water. So you're going to want plants that can tolerate a lot of dry shade over here. And then over here, we're going to put our sun plants, just like we did with the other property. Am I running out of time? I'm going to this is my cheat code. This is my cheat butterfly garden that's already pre-packaged and pre-prepared. We'll go ahead and make this a butterfly garden right here. Now what's in here? Let's go over it. This isn't something that you can't do. I'll tell you every single species here. So we have purple coneflowers, black-eyed Susans. This represents like a short grass like Sporobolus, side oats grama, or blue gamagrass. This yellow one is orange milkweed, butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa, and then these little purple ones are Monarda bradburyana. So this is just kind of a little cheat code that I'm using here for, you know, your generic butterfly garden. You can put any of these plants in here. Now this is like all scattered, sort of like a meadow garden. Now, do you see how the grasses make it look better? If instead of grasses, we had 100% flowers here, it would look a little bit more messy. I aim for at least 30% grasses or sedges in my designs. You might think, no, I want only flowers. I want so many flowers. I want more color. Believe me, it's gonna look way more pro if you add in at least 30% grasses and sedges. That's what really pulls it together and makes it look nice. Now, before you go ahead and plant these, you are going to want to make sure that you have at least 6 hours of sunlight in the front yard right here. This looks like a wooded area, so there is a lot of shade, but I have a feeling that in the front here, you might have enough sun. There might be 6 hours of sun in the front, but you do have to check during the summer. Go out and check every single hour and see how much sunlight you have, and be honest with yourself about how much sun you have, because you might really like these flowers, you might really like these plants, but you have shade, and so you're not going to want to do this because you're like, oh, there's more color over here. I like these flowers better. You can't change the sky. I mean, unless you cut down trees. So be honest with yourself about how much sun you have. You know, if this was a part sun location, I probably wouldn't plant the butterfly weed, the coneflowers, and the black-eyed Susans would probably do okay. Let's look at another house. Okay, here's one more. I got like 6% battery left. Let's do one more. Look at this cute little house. Okay, they have a mailbox garden. I love that this photo was taken from the street so that I can actually see this part. So we've got a mailbox garden here, and they have some hostas and daylilies. Okay, everybody has hostas and daylilies. Let's expand this a little bit. so that we can put some other plants in here. They're gonna be the shade plants that I talked about in the previous video right here. I would even try to push it with some part shade plants like purple coneflowers to see how much shade they can tolerate. Every area is different. And of course, we're seeing that this tree trunk go right into the grass. Let's give this tree some breathing room, and we're gonna give it a nice mulch ring right here. Just start with a mulch ring that size. You can always expand it. Eventually, if this were my house, I would connect these two. If it were my house, I would eventually connect these. And then I would have all plants in here. And it would be a nice shade garden. People do worry about attracting bees to an area where the mail carrier is going to be delivering mail. That's very thoughtful. I think as long as you don't have plants that are like swamp milkweed or pycnanthemum that really attract like a lot of wasps, I think you're probably fine. The bees that are attracted to our native plants a lot of times aren't stinging bees like honeybees. Honeybees are from Europe. They're a social bee, so they're very defensive because they're going to protect the hive, right? The solitary bees that you see on purple coneflowers, we see a lot of little green sweat bees, really cute bees. Those aren't stinging bees. I would just make sure you stay away from mountain mint and swamp milkweed because there's a lot of bald-faced hornets on those guys, not gonna lie. Okay, and so the other thing that I see here obviously is we're missing a tree right in the middle of the yard. I would put a tree garden right here. We're frugal here, so we buy little trees, okay? Little trees for 25 bucks. Of course, what are we gonna do if we have a tree? We're gonna put a cage around it. There we go. I think you're starting to catch on to kind of what I'm saying here. So got a cage around it, we've got a hardware cloth around it, and we're gonna let that tree grow. But now while it's tiny and puny, we're gonna go ahead and put other flowers around it. This is a full sun area. I see that the trees are far enough away. We'll just go ahead and grab some coneflowers, grab some aromatic Oops, what am I doing? I have to go. Shit. Sorry, I ran out of time, but I really wanted to show you this next house. So let's take a look. Okay, so I've been finding these homes on public websites for homes for sale. And I just ran across this really special home where obviously the person was a native plant gardener. So awesome. So you can take a look at the home right here and see that they had this beautiful garden in the front on this side, and they do still have grass, but this grass has a purpose. This is a path for them to walk through and access their gardens and to enjoy their gardens. So I just really love this. I can see that they have some grasses here. Maybe this is some side oats grama, and that might be a little spirobolus right there, and it's all cut down and cut back for the photo. What else? I can't really see what all of this is in here, but it does look like they have a mixture of grasses and flowers. Right here, of course, they have the little evergreens, very cute and small. There's some more grasses here and a couple of shrubs. So what I'm seeing is a diversity of types of plants. So you don't just have a whole bunch of flowers all at one level. They have grasses, they have small plants, they have larger plants, and then they've got these shrubs right here. So that gives a lot of like different terrain for your ecosystem to thrive. Now this is in the winter, so this doesn't look amazing, but check out the next picture. This is what it looks like in the summer. I'm gonna say this is probably July because here, originally I thought this might have been aromatic aster, but now that I see it's blooming at the same time as coneflower, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is probably Monarda fistulosa. Last year, Monarda fistulosa was bumping. Some years you just have that's like a really good year for that plant, and I saw a lot of Monarda fistulosa last year. So here they have some short grasses in the front right here, and the purple coneflower. They also have some shrubs in the back here. Even though it's really difficult to tell in the photo what the depth of field is to see like how far the shrubs are from the sidewalk, they are decently far away, and they've done that on purpose because when they're pulling out of the driveway with their vehicle, they need to have a sight line, meaning they need to see if there's other cars coming, otherwise it's unsafe. The shrubs are pretty tall, so they set them back, and they have the shorter plants in front. You can also see that they have some flowers back here. Hopefully I can get a better picture of that. But it's just really nice to see that somebody's using their land to restore it and give it back to nature. They have really good diversity here. I'm sure that they have tons of bees, butterflies, bunnies, and birds here. This is a picture of their side yard. This looks great. They've got some Joe Pye weed here, and it looks like maybe they have some sedges in here. This looks like might be Carex rosea in the sun. Mine kind of splays out like that. There's also some Allium cernum knew them. It looks like maybe there's some irises here, maybe a blue flag iris. I wonder if this is their rain garden because they have Joe Pye weed. I can't really tell by looking at it here. It might be sweet Joe Pye weed, blue flag iris, the Carex rosea. This might be a wet area where they're trying to kind of soak up some water on their property. So that's super cool. Of course, there's an oak right here, and maybe they have another oak right there. There's plenty of space for these trees. Having trees doesn't mean that your land is unusable all of a sudden because there's a tree there. They grow tall and you can limb them up, and they don't always cast really deep shade. You know, what really does cast deep shade is Norway maples and other kinds of maples. Over here, I think I see some Jerusalem artichoke. I think that's what that is. They like to grow in a big clump. They're pretty aggressive, but they're also edible. So that's super cool. And then this over here, I have a feeling I know what it is, but we're gonna take a look on the next screen. I think this is Rudbeckia submentosa, all this yellow here. This is a sweet black-eyed Susan. Now you'll notice this isn't the black-eyed Susan that I'm always talking about putting in your front yard because you can see it's a little taller. It's also pretty aggressive. You can see how much of it there is compared to other plants. They probably didn't plant all that Rudbeckia. A lot of it probably seeded around, and it looks so beautiful they decided to leave a lot of it growing. But yeah, sweet black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia submentosa. It's a beautiful plant. If you have a lot of space, you can really create something beautiful with this. I also see some pink in here, so I think another aggressive plant, Joe Pye weed, is in there competing with the Rudbeckia. So it's kind of nice to see them both together. And depending on the species of Joe Pye weed, they also really like wet spaces. So who knows, maybe they do have a lot of moisture in this area, and those two plants are just perfect. I mean, look at this. They have this 3-season room. It's like I'm trying to sell this house myself. If you look out the windows, you can see all these beautiful, gorgeous plants. And not only that, you get to see the wildlife. I'll bet they have a lot of really cool stories of different kinds of wildlife that they've seen. Maybe they have bluebirds. You know, I don't have those in my neighborhood because the ecosystem just isn't robust enough and we have too many invasive species. And this is a picture of the room. You can see how it looks in winter. It does still give a little bit of privacy in the winter. So privacy doesn't always have to be a giant hedge of arborvitae. You can use native plants. Rudbeckia submentosa is 5 feet tall, and that can give you some decent coverage if you want just a little bit of privacy and you don't need to be walled in by a giant hedge. I think these grasses look great in the winter. There's no reason to cut these down until spring. You can leave them up. They provide a little bit of privacy, and they provide a lot of shelter for our wildlife. This doesn't look disorganized. This doesn't look ugly or messy. They have grass right here so that they can access all the space. It looks good with how they're growing their prairie here. I just love it. They've obviously worked on this for many years, and this is a type of house that's very difficult to let go. I wish I could kind of reach out to the owners because I can understand that when you cultivate something like this, you know, we can't expect the next owner to have the same hobby as us, to be able to have time to garden and to garden specifically for nature. My heart really goes out to this family who is deciding to put this house up for sale for one reason or another. I understand how challenging it can be to move on to another property, but just want to tell them that they did a great job and I wish them the best. If you have some high quality photos of the front of your house, or maybe the backyard, or maybe a small space that you'd like to expand your garden, you can send me 1 to 3 photos at infolikesplants@gmail.com. I'll have someone review the photos and send them to me if they think it might be a good addition to this new type of video I'm doing. In the email, say that I have permission to use the photos for the video, otherwise I won't be able to use the photos. I'm having a lot of fun doing this series. Hopefully I'll get you another one in a few days.